Hey, Kate, what did you eat last night?
I got this cast iron skillet recently, and I've been trying to make myself use it. So I made cast iron sort of charred broccoli. I made this up. Broccoli with onion and cashews.
Ooh.
And I got this sauce from Stephanie Izard's Girl and the Goat brand. I can't remember what it's called, but she has this brand of sauce, bottled sauces from her Girl and the Goat restaurant. And so this was their like Szechuan sauce or something. And it's just like a, stir fry type sauce. And it's delicious. So broccoli, onion, cashews, and this very tasty, spicy, sweet, seasoned sauce all up on it.
Nice. The cashews were such a surprise. I bet they were super tasty.
They were. I happened to have them. I don't always have them on hand. I had them for a recipe. I don't remember what it was, but I had them in the fridge, and so I wanted something crunchy and protein in there because that was my meal, and so cashews was the answer, and it was perfect.
Brilliant.
And indeed, surprising.
Brilliant.
Yeah, exactly.
Nice.
Yes, felt kind of chefy.
That's what I was thinking. It's very chefy.
Totally. Yeah. What about you? What'd you have?
I had black bean espresso chili.
Oh.
I know, right? My friend Karen had me over for dinner, and so she made a black bean espresso chili, which had black beans, garlic, ground tomato, onion, salt, pepper, espresso powder, and chili powder. And it came with some really great toppings, which were sour cream, jalapeno, chives, cilantro, and at the end, you topped it all with the bittersweet chocolate. And I was really surprised because I'm not a big coffee or espresso person at all. So when she said black bean espresso chili, I was like, uh-oh. But it was really subtle, just enough that I found it so flavorful and so wonderful.
Right, that's the idea. Like there's a little coffee or espresso powder often in a chocolate dish, like chocolate frosting or cake or something like that. Like, yeah, and the chocolate in a good chili, you never taste it. You're not like, chocolate chili. But I've never just grated chocolate. I'm assuming it was grated.
Yeah.
That's how I pictured it. But I've never just put chocolate on chili before. Did you stir it in and it melted in?
I did. I thought it was really great. I was completely caught. I've never done that. I'm like, what a great little addition.
Fun.
Hey everyone, before we get to today's guest, I wanted to jump in here and say that Kate and I record these episodes over Skype sometimes, and generally Skype works really well, but during this interview it was being a bit challenging. So there's a couple points where you'll hear some static. It only lasts for a few seconds, but bear with us. Enjoy the episode. Hello and welcome to another episode of You Won't Believe What I Ate Last Night. I am Rick Fiore.
And I'm Kate DeVore.
And this is our ongoing conversation about food, health, weight management, and our endeavor to be and stay healthy in a really tasty world.
With love, kindness, and compassion towards ourselves and others.
And in that vein, today we are talking about cannabis cocktails. We are so excited.
We are.
Today, Warren Bobrow is with us. Warren Bobrow is a world-renowned mixologist, cocktail whisperer, and cannabis alchemist. I love that phrase.
I do too.
He is a 5 times published author and was a speaker at South by Southwest 2018. And we are so excited to have him here today to talk to us about cannabis cocktails. Welcome to the show, Warren.
I am just so thrilled to be here. This is one opportunity that I have to set the record straight about how delicious my cocktails are, and they're really not things that people should be afraid of. They should be interested in them, and they should want to try things that are different because of the great flavor that they offer.
Oh, believe me, there's nothing I wish we could be doing more than sipping on these while having this conversation, I assure you.
And with that said, my book Cannabis Cocktails does have some very potent cocktails in it. So if you were to be having one cocktail, that would probably be enough for the entire show.
So a little goes a long way.
Oh, yeah, low and slow.
Low and slow. All right, so our first question for you is, what did you eat last night?
Oh, I was at Shuko, which is a ultra high-end sushi bar in New York City, and I had the kaiseki plate with my wife, and it was just about the most incredible culinary experience of my life.
Wow.
The owners of Shuko they were at Masa, which is one of the great sushi bars in the world in New York City, and they were handed what it appears to be a boatload of money to make a restaurant without a name out in front, and you basically put yourself in the hands of the chef. So there's an omakase, which is the sushi end. I had the kaiseki, which shows the talent of the kitchen.
Wow.
Oh my gosh, I've only dreamt about doing something like that because we've learned so much about kaiseki during our show.
Exactly.
Doing the show.
And the portions are very small, but there are a lot of them. So I did the wine pairing along with the kaiseki, and they took me places I've never been before.
Wow, that sounds amazing. How fortuitous that we're interviewing you about this today, that we get to hear about that.
Right,
That's
absolutely.
cool.
With such a smashing thing in my brain, which is only less than 12 hours old.
Oh, how lovely. So how did you become the cocktail whisperer? How did you go from, because I would imagine that you were a mixologist before you became the Cannabis Alchemist. No, so tell us, how'd that happen?
Not at all. I was originally, let's step back to the very beginning. I have a degree in film from Emerson College in Boston. I had aspirations of working in the motion picture and television industry. That didn't smile upon me because I learned once I was in the business that I couldn't get jobs because I had family in the industry, in the motion picture industry, my grandfather specifically, and he was hated and feared. So he was what we truly call a tycoon. And he was not well liked, unfortunately. So he burned lots of bridges in his, climb to the top. And when I came along, I was through because people in the business knew who he was. I mean, he was a very powerful man, and he pissed people off. So when young grandson Warren showed up, it was like there was nothing I could do right, and that's okay because it wasn't my direction in life. So I had always wanted to be a chef. And soon after failing in television, I took a job as a dishwasher in a little country inn in York Harbor, Maine, where I happened to be living at the time. And I said to the chef, "Do you need any cooks?" And he said, "No, but I need a pot scrubber." And I started at the pot sink, so to speak. And I worked my way up the line, and I went to culinary school, and I, to Johnson & Wales for a time, and did the ACF apprenticeship, so I'm a classically trained chef.
Oh, interesting. And yet you don't infuse cannabis into food. You only.
I don't mess with it, and I don't mess with CBD either because I believe it's snake oil. But I know people have great results with it, but until it's been checked out by the FDA, it's snake oil. So
what is CBD?
CBD is they say that people who have muscular injuries or problems with circulation. There's a whole different litany of things that hemp-based CBD is supposed to treat. I'm not a doctor. I can't tell you what it does. I know that people have gotten relief from it. But there's two different ingredients in the culinary usage of cannabis. Some people use hemp, and some people use THC. I use THC. I find it to be much more reliable because I like to get stoned. So it's as easy as that. I mean, I can't candy color it too much more than that, other than the fact that it's a great feeling and no one knows your business. So I wrote the book, Cannabis Cocktails, not only because I was a trained chef and not only because I understood food and wine and the way things go together, but I wanted to not be so antagonistic in my life. And I think you'll understand that because the framework is I live here in New Jersey where cannabis is illegal. I have a medical reason to use it, so I have a card here in New Jersey, which takes away some of the stress, but not all the stress, because if I was to walk outside and smoke my weed on the sidewalk here, and a cop goes by and he smells it, he's probably going to arrest me and ask questions later. So I just don't need that trouble. So one of the reasons why I don't work with food is it's not predictable. And I find that my cocktails are much more predictable. But the direction that I'm kind of going in with this is not that it's the unpredictability or the predictability of it. It's the fact that no one knows your business. And I love that about making a cannabis cocktail. So it's just beyond the art form, goes into a legitimate reason for mixing cannabis and alcohol together, it's because that's the way they did things back in the 1800s in the early apothecary, because they didn't have great refrigeration. And articles like cannabis are very fragile, and they break down very quickly and they rot. So alcohol was an interesting way of preservation, and it's one that works. So that was my inspiration, if you will, the early apothecary. Many of the ingredients that they used in the early apothecary were no more than snake oil, if you will. My personal history with snake oil is pretty remarkable. My grandfather, who was in the motion picture industry, also was in the patent pharmaceutical industry. And he made a product. You're probably young, too young for this, but I hope you are. But one of his most famous products was a product that was no more than whiskey, but it was sold in every pharmacy in America. And it was touted by major television shows like the Lawrence Welk Show and the Jack Parr Show.
What was it called?
It was called Geritol. My grandfather was Geritol. Geritol was no more than snake oil.
Oh my God! I remember those commercials. Like, yeah. Oh my God!
So I'm the eldest grandson. So to this, big thing. So what? The way that it all happened is that that side of the family is extraordinarily anti-cannabis, along with my father's side of the family. They're extraordinarily anti-cannabis, and I got disowned, which was really one of the great gifts in life, because I'm 100% self-made. I can honestly say that I'm an entrepreneur. I started from zero. I went into bankruptcy. I lost everything, and I've started and rebuilt my life and tried to do it in a way that I knew was authentic and would play well because, as I said, it's non-antagonistic. No one knows your business when you're sipping a cannabis cocktail. It can be as strong as you want it, and no one has to know. You could just say, oh, I'm having a Negroni, and no one has to know that gin in the Negroni is infused with enough cannabis to knock down a family of elephants. No, you're not going to say that. But
I love that idea, because one of the things I struggle with here in D.C. is, it recently became legal that people can smoke it here. It's everywhere. And I just want to clarify, I am a virgin, Warren, when it comes to drugs. I have not done one drug.
Oh, well, I would love to make you a cannabis cocktail someday. I have a batch made right now with Martinique Rum Agricole, which is freshly pressed sugarcane rum that doesn't have caramel or sugar added, re-added. So it's just the agricultural, pure rum. And for some reason, it takes to the decarb THC, cannabis, just beautifully, and you do an infusion where it sits in a hot plate in a double boiler for about 2 hours, just barely simmering, just a little bubble. And what that does is it infuses the THC right into the spirit, and then you build your cocktail from there. And I do little, like a grilled grapefruit juice punch, or punch, as they say down in Martinique, that just knock your socks off. And I use Angostura bitters, which is good for the gut, and make it something really flavorful. And
so you're obviously infusing the THC into the drink, which is the psychoactive portion. How much of the flavor of cannabis? Because I know that with food, which I've watched some TV shows, that Bon Appetit show, I'm not sure if you're familiar with that, where they do a lot of infusing of food, and I find it great fun to watch their creativity there. And it seems like the flavor profiles are as big a part as the effect. And so I'm wondering if that's the same for you.
So I'm using a piece of machinery. I'm just going to stand up for a second so I can show you what it is. It's called the Lift Decarboxylator, and it's a piece of machinery. It's made in Boston, that area. Here it is, the Ardent Lift. And these are the folks that I went down to South by Southwest to speak with. It was called Disrupting the Cannabis Kitchen. This little container here is a decarb machine. Remember, we used to do decarbing in the oven, and the oven fluctuates as much as 60 to 100 degrees in some aspects.
What does decarb mean, Warren?
Decarbing means removing the acid carbol, the acid part of THC. All pot is THCA before it's been activated, and it takes the A acid and gets rid of it. And what it reveals is the THC, which is the part that gives you the feeling that we like.
I see. Thank you.
So it activates the cannabis. I'm not a scientist. People think that I'm some sort of smart guy, but really, everything is right here.
Okay.
Everything is right here. This little box, this little container makes my life so perfect. This little stainless, little aircraft aluminum thing fits into a stainless steel container. You put your cannabis inside of it. You put this little silicone top on. The top cranks on very easily. Hit start, and an hour later you have perfectly decarbed cannabis, which is 100% bioavailable. This is what made me a star.
And this thing that you're holding, it fits in your hands, and it's just cylindrical.
Yeah.
Looks like a thermos.
It looks like a thermos. I probably wouldn't take it on an airplane, that kind of thing.
Yeah,
Right.
so you put the buds in there, the flowers?
You put the flowers in there, you hit go, and in an hour or an hour and 15 minutes, the cannabis is 100% bioavailable. You can make it into edibles, you can make it into infusables, you can make it into cosmetics, whatever
So does
you
that
want.
mean that if you ate it just plain,
Right.
which would be disgusting, it
Yep.
would have an effect as
It will.
opposed to eating
will
it
have-
without that?
yes.
Okay.
Yeah, because if you eat it without it being decarbed, you're just gonna, it's just gonna be like eating grass outside on the sidewalk.
I
Which
see.
you-
So my understanding is that fat and alcohol are typically the things in cooking and baking that do that process. That's the process that those things
Yes.
do. Okay, now I get
Yes,
it.
they do. And then there's a further step, which we didn't talk about. I use something called lecithin. Lecithin is brain food, and so I infuse Vichy water, which is like sparkling water with herbs de Provence and sea salt. And you just put like a teaspoon of lecithin in there and mix it through, and it's it takes the THC and it hits you. It supercharges it.
So, Warren, talk to me about what are the medicinal and healing qualities of cannabis? That's something that I'm always sort of super interested in because I'm so unfamiliar with it.
I love the idea that the use of cannabis as a medicine. There are healing benefits of cannabis that go back 5,000 years. The Chinese, in their pharmacopoeia, talk about the use of cannabis as a device for healing, thousands and thousands of years ago. So, as I said, I'm not a doctor. I don't even play one on television, but I know that there are health benefits that affected me and helped me. So I put it in a very personal light. When my dad passed away a couple of years ago, he made a point of not leaving me anything other than his glaucoma, which was the greatest gift that he could have given me, because not only did it allow me to get a cannabis card here in New Jersey, but it told me that I really wasn't taking care of my vision. And you have no idea about glaucoma until it's too late. It doesn't have any symptoms. It's non-symptomatic. So the last thing you find out from your ophthalmologist is that they're taking your driver's license away forever. And I didn't want to hear that. So the pressure in my right eye was 48 and my left eye was 38. Right now they're 11 and 11. And I use indica strains to reduce the pressure behind my eyes. And it works pretty darn well for me. I don't know how it works for anyone else, but I know how it works for me, and that's the fact. I know that it works for me. I know that when I mix my cocktails, they're quite potent. We really had to ratchet back the recipes to make them so they didn't destroy you. Some people like that, but that's okay. I mean, that's not the book that I wrote. I wrote a book on non-antagonistic cannabis use and mixing the ingredients that I put together so carefully in tasty little craft cocktails like you've never had before. And it really is fun. And yes, and to your point, Kate, yes, you can taste the strains. And yes, with the use of the ardent, what it does is it reveals many of the terpenes. The terpenes are the aromatics like limone, or there's different ones. There's pine, there's lemon, there's a whole range, and many of them we use in wine tasting. These descriptors that we use, and I think there are probably more descriptors in cannabis than there are in wine tasting or whiskey tasting. All the things that I do, which is I do for a living. I love to be able to take those descriptors and put them to work for me in the cannabis world, because they're truly wine terms or food terms.
So do you choose particular strains for particular drinks for that reason?
Absolutely. And not only for this particular drinks, but the particular craft spirits. And I only use craft spirits. I don't use big name, brands, because first off, I'm not going to get permission from the companies to use it. So that's the framework first that we don't want to have happen. You don't want to get sued for using someone. I probably wouldn't use a bottle of Johnny Walker. I think Diageo would probably come after me.
Oh, wow. That didn't even occur to me. That's interesting.
Yeah, well, because I work in the liquor industry, I want to make sure I don't burn any of those bridges. The other thing that happens when you use big name products is there's a lot of manipulation of the liquor. So I don't want to use something that has extra caramel coloring added to approximate age. Like a bottle of rum that's really dark on the shelf is probably not dark rum. It's probably light rum that had caramel added to it. They also add sugar, and they also re-add glycerin. In the rum world, there's no ingredients label. You'd be horrified to find out what's in there. No one's going to tell you. It's really a mess. And that's what hard liquor is science lab stuff. So I'm really careful about what I use, and I want to use the best possible ingredients. So I use small producer craft spirits because I know they're not adding in extra sugar. I know they're not adding glycerin to approximate mouthfeel. I know they're not adding color, which when you simmer something for 2 hours, it's going to be almost black and it's going to taste really dark. I don't want that. I want to have a rum that's raw. I want to have something that speaks really clearly of its terroir, of its provenance. I love using gin. I use a gin from up in Vermont called Bar Hill, and it's made from raw honey and grain. I just love those flavors. I make like bee's knees cocktails with lemon and the raw honey and the grain the grain gin and cannabis, and it's just a wonderful cocktail.
It sounds lovely.
Did you know? Hey, Kate, did you know that birds' saliva is actually an expensive delicacy?
Not only did I not know that, I never considered until this moment that birds had saliva. I mean, obviously they must. They eat the worms and the seeds and the things. But, yep, never thought about bird saliva once ever in my life.
See, in your profession and working with, voice and speech pathologists and actors and professionals, you're going to be able to take this new piece of information and educate them. Yeah,
delicacy to whom?
Oh, let's go there.
And how is it harvested?
That's what I want to know. The report doesn't say that.
That's really the question.
It says, forget caviar and expensive truffles. Bird saliva is the food of the well-heeled, at least in China anyway. Bird's nest soup is an expensive delicacy made from rare bird's nest created from the saliva of small swiftlets. The nests, which have been used in Chinese cooking for over 4 centuries, are dissolved into water to make a soup, which is believed to have exquisite flavor and be of benefit to health. The bird nests are considered to be one of the most expensive animal food products consumed by humans.
Well, that's fascinating, but not quite as fascinating as the fact that they make nests out of their saliva? Is that what I heard you to say?
That's what it seems to imply, yeah.
It's not the saliva is holding together the twigs and the hair and the stuff. It's that the whole nest is made of the saliva and it melts. Well, that's got to be some very interesting spittle.
Spittle.
How does the effect compare to either eating it or smoking it when you drink it in a cocktail?
I don't want to sound like Chicken Little, but it hits you in 5 minutes.
Oh wow!
Oh wow!
Wow!
Because I was just going to ask you, what could a novice expect? Someone that's never done cannabis before. If I started with cocktails, what could I expect? Would it be that strong? How strong would it be, or would that depend on how it's mixed?
It might be overwhelming. So I gave instructions in the book on what to do if you have a cannabis overdose. No one has ever died from a cannabis overdose, but it is an unpleasant feeling. You almost feel like you're seasick. What I recommend doing is chewing a couple peppercorns. Now, the peppercorn trick I learned from Neil Young, so that's not something I created. He always said if you took too much weed, chew some peppercorns. Well, chewing peppercorns is pretty disgusting. So I probably wouldn't chew the peppercorns alone. What I found out is that the terpene limone, which is lemon, that citrus flavor that you get in cannabis, is counteracted by like lemon, fresh lemonade without very much sugar added to it. Just, freshly squeezed lemon juice takes you off of a cannabis overdose. So the peppercorns you chew up in your mouth and you toss it down with a fresh lemon juice, a little bit of sweetener in there, lots of ice if you can, and you'll be fine. And you don't have to go to the hospital.
So
and don't let someone take you.
So
Because they got your number if you go.
yeah, that's true. So does that mean that if you put lemon juice in a cannabis cocktail, it's going to negate the effects?
It might make it a little less potent.
Mm-hmm, that's interesting.
That's fun, and I think it's a nice balance of flavors. I love citrus, and I think citrus brings me into a happier place. Mm-hmm. So I'm not trying to get people destroyed, and I know that my book would never have been published by my publisher if we did a recreational book. That's not what they were interested in. What they were interested in was to offer an alternative means of taking a very misunderstood medicine. Now, I almost don't want to say medicine. I almost want to say curative, perhaps, because again, it's not been evaluated by the FDA, and I feel that that they're lurking out there in the shadows for someone to make a health claim, and I don't want to be that one. So yesterday, I received an email from someone who's working in the CBD world in Las Vegas. And they wanted me to write an article on someone who's working with legal CBD. And I asked them, have they been evaluated by the FDA? And they said no. And I said, well, I cannot possibly make any comments in the magazine that it would have been for Forbes magazine. There was no way I was going to do that because that shows that Forbes is behind, they're giving their approval. And I don't know if they're giving their approval. I can't possibly second guess them. And I wouldn't dare do that because it's not my grandfather's store. It's not like he owns the company. I can't, say I'm sorry. So I had to turn down the story because not that it wasn't intriguing. It's just that I couldn't verify that it actually did anything. Mm-hmm. But I know from my own personal use, when I use cannabis and I use different strains, I can literally feel the pressure go away behind my eyes. It's a wild feeling. So with that said, I've written 5 books on cocktail mixology. They're all my own drinks that I've created from scratch. So I have this depth of flavor that's bursting in my head, and it really wants to get out. And how do you get it out? By mixing craft cocktails.
Are there places people can go to get these, like a bar, other than making them at home?
Yeah, they better not go to a bar. I want to know if they're getting them in a bar, and I know people are doing it, they're taking a massive risk because a liquor license is not an inexpensive thing. It's extraordinarily expensive. Around this area, in the New York metro area, they cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. I couldn't imagine making a cannabis cocktail inside a bar and having them get caught and having to lose their liquor license over one drink. I mean, that's just crazy. But I teach you how to do it so you could do it at home. And the drinks are so much fun to prepare that the whole process is a learning experience, and it's fun and it tastes good and it's exciting. And when it hits you, you're like, wow, what was I doing before this?
That makes sense too, because that explains part of our question about the legality, because you're not doing anything illegal.
I'm not doing anything legal. Yeah. Okay.
Illegal because you have.
No, I'm not doing anything. I'm not doing anything legal.
Oh, really? But wait, you have a card.
No, I'm mixing it with spirits.
Is that illegal?
Oh, yes, it is.
Seriously?
Well, I'll tell you what makes it illegal is that it's the manipulation of the alcohol without the TTB being aware that I'm doing it. So I would never be able. The TTB is the new name.
Interesting.
For tobacco and firearms. The recipe for my drink is not approved because it's a Schedule I drug, and mixing it, manipulating, altering the recipe that the TTB is approved. They would just, their heads would explode. I mean, literally. Number one, it's a Schedule I drug. So you're mixing a Schedule I drug with a controlled substance.
Wow.
So 2 controlled substances are mixed together. Whether they feel good or do something good or not, it's still illegal. So with that said, I have done parties. I've done too many parties. And that's not even saying that I've done more than 5. More than 2 was too many.
I see.
It's something you can't control. I believe in in responsible use of cannabis and certainly responsible drinking. And this is something that can get out of hand extremely quickly because the drinks are so delicious and they compile upon themselves. All I hear out in the world of cannabis is microdosing, but can you imagine taking 100 milligrams of THC in a cocktail, which mine are,
Oh, wow.
and having 2 of those in 1 hour? You'd be destroyed, and I don't want the responsibility for that. I can't have. I don't want anyone to have a bad time. I want them to have a good time. It's about healing. It's not about pain.
Yeah.
And so I've gotten a lot of pushback from people when I first wrote the book. Possibly rightfully so, maybe not the way that they went about it, but I had to learn how to have a back like a duck.
So if people want to buy your book and make these at home, do they need that carboxylator thing or decarboxylator thing?
No, they don't, because and wonderful question, because when I wrote the book, this was not available. So I teach you how to do it in the oven or the toaster oven or even in the microwave, which is a pretty fabulous method. It's like a minute and a half on one side, minute and a half on the other side, crumble it up, and you're good to go. The problem with the microwave is that not every microwave is the same.
Yeah.
So we're looking for a low temperature microwave as opposed to a high temperature. The recipes I tested all on myself. I didn't test on anyone else because I didn't want anyone else to have a bad time. I had quite a few bad times, and it created some some arguments around the house. Yeah.
I can see that.
Yep. But I'm the living proof that cannabis doesn't kill you. It won't kill you. You might feel like you're not feeling well, but that too will pass. Liquors go really nicely with the infusions. And some of the ones that I find work much better are darker liquors because, unfortunately, when you decarb, you get a darker color out of the cannabis. You lose that vibrant green color. So it gets kind of, I don't know, I almost want to say it's like pea green. Not pea like pea, but pea like early spring peas. That's
Totally.
like spring English peas. That's the color that appears to be the most. So it's not pleasant. And so I try to use darker colored spirits so it doesn't show up quite so much. Although I do have lighter spirits in there as well, but you're going to have a decidedly yellowish green hue to it. Some people do things with daiquiris where they can really shake it up and get that foaminess, and then it kind of disappears. The greenish yellowish color disappears into the juices that you're using, so it doesn't really matter. But as a rule, I like using a darker base spirit like rum or mezcal. Mezcal, oh my gosh, mezcal does marvelous things, and why it does marvelous things is such a mystical creation anyway. It's not overly manipulated. It's very pure. It has that wonderful smokiness to it, and it picks up beautiful strains of cannabis like New York sour diesel with that sort of skunky, fuely flavor. Kind of works really nicely with mezcal, and it comes out, and the effects come out, and any of the effects that are either a sativa or an indica, you're taking it into your gastrointestinal tract. It's going to make you feel pretty darn good.
Hey, Warren, here's a question for you. So, one of the things I always think about, I'm always concerned about what I've always considered the addictive quality of cannabis. So I guess I have a question. Is it addictive?
There is no, and I'm going to go on the record. Absolutely. I get into this argument with my wife. I get it with other people. And it's like they want to find fault in something that's organic and plant-based as if it's worse than the worst drunk they've ever had or worse than sitting down and smoking a package of cigarettes. I can't understand that. And I've very rarely had anything that was overwhelming, and it was only something I did to myself. It wasn't something that someone did to me. It wasn't like going to a party back in the 80s and figuring out that someone hit you with LSD. It wasn't like that.
Totally. I think that's where all my thinking comes from, is from the 80s, because I come from the age where Nancy Reagan was just telling us to all say no. So I think I have it in my head that everything's addictive in relation to cannabis.
But everything is addictive. I mean,
yeah.
You know, and I'll always go back to the analogy of it's okay to go out and buy and because I worked in liquor stores for so many years, it's okay to go to a liquor store and buy a case of Bud Light Lime and drink it down in one night and throw up on your neighbor's lawn. That's okay. But sit and smoke a joint, you know, because you need to alleviate something that's bothering you, and, you know, those stinking potheads. Yeah. Upset. It's really sad. And I believe that it makes me feel very, very sad, because this isn't something I've just discovered. I've been using cannabis in one form or another since I was about 12 or 13 years old. It wasn't something that was ever forbidden to me, other than the fact that no one really knew about it. But my peers were going out and getting drunk, I was smoking grass. I mean, that's just how I was. And I can't make that up, and I can't change that. That's what worked for me. So when you have individuals who, you know, they want to let loose on a Friday night and chill out and relax, they'll think nothing of going and drinking a fifth of bourbon. But I couldn't imagine drinking a fifth. I mean, I'd be dead. But that's just, you know, that's what they see as being correct behavior, and they look towards cannabis and cannabis use as being, you know, that guy who's living in his mom's basement and who can't get a job. And I always said that no dummy wrote 5 books, or no stoner wrote 5 books. But guess what? I may not be the smartest guy in the world, probably am, but I'm not going to say that it's that I wasn't smart enough to write 5 books because I was stoned. No, it made me focus. It made me crisp, made me succinct. It made me be able to have that conversation that I wanted to have, because it took away a lot of those inhibitions. And it didn't make me feel overwhelmed, and it didn't make me feel as if I was trying to escape from my problems, which my dad would always say to me. He said, "Oh, you smoke grass because you want to escape from life." And I don't think it's that way at all. If anything, it enhances my life. It makes my life better.
And that's definitely a generational thing. I think when I was growing up, that was certainly a big message that was out there that I got from my parents. And what's so amazing is that you've been able to create this niche market around this whole issue.
Well, it's something brand new, and I'm the first. My book is the first one published on this topic. There is no other book out there. There are some magazine articles that have been written, but I think that their science is flawed. I've tried out most of the recipes that I could find on the web to make cannabis cocktails that other people have done, and they're horribly flawed. I stumbled upon my recipes because, I'm a saucier, I'm a trained chef. I understand the science in the kitchen. Mm-hmm. That stuff comes easily to me. Flavors come easily to me. I'm interested in making people happy. I don't want to see them get destroyed. I want to see them have a good time and enjoy themselves in life, and try to add some, as we used to say down in New Orleans, some lagniappe. Lagniappe, coating the spoon, that little bit extra.
A little something extra, yeah.
Extra. And that's what I offer in my cannabis cocktails. It's a lagniappe.
That's a nice way to look at it.
So wonderfully to this whole idea of kindness and compassion that Kate and I are always talking about, right?
That's it.
This idea where this whole thing has come in the last several years, even the progress we've made in being able to see that it can be something that brings people relief. It can bring something that makes people's lives much easier. It's really wonderful.
And wellness is so important. So one of the events that I spoke at in South by Southwest was sponsored by Mercedes-Benz, and it was on wellness. And they did specifically tell me not to mention cannabis, because they're a very conservative company and a car company, and they probably don't want to go on the record to say that, that you should be doing anything other than driving. So we didn't talk about cannabis, but we talked about becoming one with yourself and relaxing and breathing and getting away from your phone a little bit, because the phone is what you use at the end of the day to kind of give you a synopsis of where you've been during the day. The capturing of the information and the assimilation of that information is very personal, and it's how we see. We don't see through a 4-inch square. We see through this greater world around us. Mm-hmm. And when we realize that the greater world is around us and not around this, that leads to greater wellness.
And I think your timing is so great because of all of this. And I do think there's some leftover fears and misunderstandings of all the people sitting around drinking their martinis saying, oh, you're just trying to escape reality with your weed.
And I accept that but I can honestly say that I come from that mindset. I come from a very politically conservative, neo-conservative background. Not my own, certainly, but the people who, like my mom and dad, they were very conservative people. My mom may have been a Democrat, but she was extraordinarily conservative. All drugs are bad to her. My father, the same way. I mean, I don't know what happened to him in later years, but I can tell you that the simple fact that I smoked grass was like doing heroin.
And you mentioned that the legality issue has prevented a lot of research. So I think as soon as the legality is taken care of, then we're going to be able to have more research that reveals more of what is
the health
likely
benefits.
true.
So, and then so we get back to the CBD thing, and I would love to be able to shout the CBD benefits across all the hillsides in America, but I can't do that until the FDA comes in and says that it does this, and this is the recommended dose. There is no recommended dose. We don't know about the efficacy of it. We don't know, the purity of it. A lot of CBD is being shipped in from China. How do we know that they're not using pesticides? So I recommend that if someone is intrigued by these items, by what they see out there in the marketplace, they should be very, very careful about the sourcing of their material and get it from the best possible place, and that would be grown here in the United States, hopefully organic, possibly biodynamic. Being good to yourself. You don't want to make yourself sick.
Yeah.
That's really important.
So, Warren, how do you stay healthy in a tasty world?
I virtually quit drinking. I mean, I have a glass of wine with dinner. I love drinking red wine. I love white wine. I love champagne. But I'm really not drinking hard liquor anymore. I do, occasionally for my work because I'm asked to do tasting notes for different companies. But as far as going into a bar and sitting down and having a cocktail, it's been a pretty long time since I've done that. And it's funny in that dialogue, when people have asked me, I'll say like, wow, this is like the fourth drink I've had since July. And it's true. It feels so much better. I mean, look at me now. I mean, I'll be 57 next month. No one would believe me that I'm going to be 57 next month.
Yeah, you look great.
Yeah, thanks. My grandmother lived to 105, so I know I have good roots.
Good stock. And so our follow-up to that question, how do you stay tasty in a healthy world? And how do you do that with love, kindness, and compassion toward yourself and others?
Oh, I cook simply. I do simply prepared food with love. I use the best possible ingredients, which could mean anything in life, the way that you look at life. It could be the flowers that you pick, the soup that you eat, the drink that you drink. Make sure that they're all consciously improving you rather than taking away from you. And take that consciousness and breathing and centering yourself and sharing. And I think it's so important. I got an interesting email that I'd like to share with you just off the top of my head. It was a fellow journalist. I said to the fellow journalist, they said, "You're not like the others. You're not like other journalists." And I said, "No, it's true. I'm not like the others, and I'll help anyone that I possibly can help. I won't do your work for you, but if you need something, need a name, need a contact, I'm all about helping. I'm all about helping others."
So, Warren, thank you so much. This has been such a lovely conversation. I feel like I want to keep chatting all day, but we do have to wrap up. How can people find you? How can people find out about your books and your website? Give us your info.
Okay. Cocktailwhisperer.com. It's all one word, cocktailwhisperer.com.
And we'll have this up on our website, too, for our regular listeners.
Instagram is my name, Warren Bobrow. My Twitter is Warren Bobrow with a number 1 because someone stole my name and they taunted me. It was awful. I'm on LinkedIn as my name. On Facebook, I think it's W Bobrow. I have my gnome, which is Klaus the Sow's gnome. He's on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter.
He's all over your Facebook.
Yeah, he's all over my Facebook. He's a famous guy. Let me see if I can grab him for just 2 seconds. Where's the little guy? There he is. Here's the little guy. So Klaus is certainly as famous as I am, if not more.
It's a garden gnome.
He's a garden gnome, but he's a drinking gnome. See, he's got a little bottle.
Yes, he does.
Sometimes a little smoking gnome, too. But he's from the 1860s. He's really an original German drinking gnome.
Wow.
And none other.
He's
I haven't
gorgeous.
seen any others. Yes, he's pretty cool. So anyway, so you can find out Klaus, the Sow's Gnome, or Klaus Gnome on Twitter, or me, Warren Bobrow. Anytime anyone connects with me on Twitter, they get a thank you note for me, and it's not automated. They get me. And I think that's important. Social media is social. I didn't get to where I am today by building a signal fire out in the backyard. I got it through using Twitter because it levels the playing field and it helps my smile shine through because I was given the gift of gab on the keyboard.
That's lovely.
150 characters or less.
Well, thank you so much. So everybody, please check out Warren's info, check out all of his various pages, check out our website, youwon'tbelievewhatIate.com. You can also follow us on Facebook, You Won't Believe What I Ate Last Night, and on Instagram. We're not on Twitter. We do not have the gift of gab on the keyboard currently, but we're working on it. And please subscribe and rate and review our podcast, y'all. So thank you all so much for listening. And thanks for joining us, Warren.
What a great time. Thank you so much. Be well.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Right. Bye.